Not really sure how to begin this, and the title may make more sense after reading my experience. I'll try to be as brief and concise as possible. Summer of 2004, my family was supposed to vacation in Kennebunkport, Maine. My father was stuck in meetings, so he was going to come up from Manhattan a few days after us. My mom wanted to drive up, super annoying to me at the time, but we didn't have a choice, and my brother, sister, and I loaded into the car and started the drive. I was about 14 at the time. The drive was uneventful, but there were various delays, and we ended up getting in a lot later than we had originally planned. And because of this, the owners of the house we were renting had turned in for the night, and we weren't able to get a hold of them to get the keys. Sounds like horrible planning, but apparently they were pretty strict about the time frame to pick up the keys. My mom, unfazed, decided she wanted lobster, so we went to one of our favorite spots. She called my dad to see if he could make us some reservations at a hotel from New York while we ate. We were enjoying the lobster, well, a guy came up and started chatting with my mom. I figured it was just a friendly local making conversation. During this, my dad calls my mom, and my mom excuses herself to speak to him. Apparently all hotels were booked for the night. Go figure. The plan was for us to drive to the nearest town and just find somewhere to stay until we could pick up the keys for our vacation home. Apparently the local had been listening into my mom's conversation and came back over when she got off the phone. I want to say there was nothing outwardly off about him. He was preppy, clean-cut, unassuming, and fit in with the clientele. He told my mom that he had a big home with a big guest house, and we were more than welcome to stay. His wife wouldn't mind. Immediately, my reaction was, fuck that. No way in the world was I staying in a random dude's house in creepy Maine in the dark. No offense to anyone from Maine, but the streets can get pretty creepy. My mom, doing her due diligence, determined this guy was legit. He said he was in finance. My mom was an investment banker, and they chatted enough for my mom to determine he wasn't totally full of it. I called my dad hysterical. He said I was overreacting, and that I needed to get out of the city more and accept that sometimes people are just nice. So my brother, sister, and I got into our car and followed him back to his house. The guest house was really nice, fully furnished, but the beds were oddly placed. The guest house had 2 bedrooms, and instead of the beds being located in the middle/centered, they were right under the window in each room. It just seemed out of place. Anyway, fast forward to when we're all getting ready to go to bed. My mom hears a knock on the door, and it's the man. He says he just wanted to check in to make sure we got Symbol all right. Cool, nice thing to do. About 30 minutes later, he comes back to check in again. At this point, my mom said, "Thanks, we're good. We'll stop by the house in the morning to say thank you." Fast forward another 30 or 45 minutes. I can't sleep. I'm terrified. We hear this rustling, which is odd because the guest house was nowhere around trees or in close proximity to bushes that might cause such a noise. At this point, I see my mom wide awake and look up at the window, motioning towards the window with her eyes. Let me add, none of the windows had curtains. The guy said it's because his wife was in the process of redecorating. When I looked up, there was a male figure just standing. I thought I was going to have a heart attack. I don't know how long he was there for. When he walked away, my mom waited a bit and then told us to get our stuff together. She wasn't messing around. We had my dad on the phone at this point, and he was pretty much flipping out at my mom about something, but I couldn't hear what. My mom said she was going to put stuff in the car and to follow her out. This was around 2 a.m. When we got into the car, we pulled around to the front of the main house, so my mom could return the key and say thanks and get the fuck out of there. However, when we got up to the front, all of the lights were off. Not just all the lights, but it looked like no one had been home. Porch light, table lamp and front windows. Everything was pitch black. Also, the two cars were gone. The local's car, and what we presumed to be his wife's car. After seeing this, my mom, at this point pretty unsettled, said that we were leaving and proceeded to drive to the gate. The gate at the end of the driveway had been deadbolted/padlocked shut from the inside. It wasn't a super strong gate, so my dad said to just rev it since we were in a big SUV and get out of there. We drove straight back to New York City, not speaking the entire time. We've never returned back to Maine, and my parents refused to speak about it. I asked a family member one night about it when he was drunk, and all he said is, "Hey, didn't they tell you? The actual owners of that house were on vacation." I'm assuming my mom or dad followed up with local authorities and figured that out, but never told us. I don't know who that man was, or what was planned that evening. I was curious as to whether there were any known serial killers or murderers who were in the area at the time, whether traveling through or anything. And this is a true story, folks. As much as I'd like to be a writer, I'm not one. I've scrolled through this sub 100 times thinking to myself, has anything happened to me that I could post? Like I'm sure we all have. It wasn't until last week that I started thinking about posting my dad's story here. I'm not sure if this is the correct sub. I'd like to know because my father is the best person I know, and I want to share his story one way or the other. Spring 2014 is a slow season for my father's business. The weather is nice and the roads are clear, which means slow shifts at an auto shop. It was mid-April at around 4 p.m. The wind was pulling in a nice breeze when my dad, Bill, was walking around the outside of his shop. It happened to overlook a small stream and running trail, which he enjoyed gazing at near the end of his shift. And the side of his building ran along the top of a steep hill which turned into the path. He heard a ruffling in the wind, and about halfway down the hill he sees a big blue tarp. Being very proud of his business and its appearance, he started to climb down the hill. He was just about to grab for it, about 15 feet away, to toss it in the dump, when he saw a car pull into the lot. He turned around and went to help his customer. When 5:30 p.m. rolls around, he closes up and goes home, forgetting all about the tarp. The next afternoon, Bill is sitting in his office when 3 policemen came in. They asked my father and coworkers a bunch of questions about any suspicious behavior they might have seen. Side note, my dad is extremely charismatic and friendly. He oftentimes talks people into sharing information they probably really shouldn't. He looks like someone you can trust, and he seemed to always have the insider details about things. So Bill and his coworker Hank are talking with a female police officer when she lets slip that a body had been discovered just down the hill. "Oh shit, I was down there yesterday cleaning. I didn't see any body though," Bill said. "Around what time? Did you happen to see a large blue and white tarp while you were cleaning the area?" she asked. Yeah, actually. I almost grabbed it yesterday, but I ended up getting distracted." She asked him more questions about what time, what he saw, and the like. When he asked her if the body was found in the tarp, yes, it was. A woman jogging found it this morning at around 10:30 a.m. My dad was floored. He was just there yesterday. After a few more questions, the police all head to the crime scene to finish the initial investigation. Nobody was allowed onto the scene, and the police were asking that passerby not take any pictures. Flash forward a few days. The police went back to my father's shop. They noticed the security cameras set up around the building, and they were hoping they might catch something on tape. While transferring the data over, my dad started asking more questions about the murder. He learned it was a middle-aged man that had been stabbed to death. Not too much to go on, as it seemed. "Hey, you know there are a couple of meth heads that live in this shack behind our shop. It's connected to that bar?" Bill started talking about his own predictions for the whodunit scenarios. He continued, "Yeah, we have a lot of problems with them. stealing scrap metal from the back, letting their dogs run wild, and even hadn't threatened to shoot me once when I was spraying their dogs with water to quit the barking. You should check them out." The officer nodded and gathered the rest of his things and left. "Hey, Hank, let's go down there, see if we can find anything cool," my father whispered to his coworker. "All right, I guess it couldn't do any harm." They started down the hill where the trench was found. The grass was flat, and the tarp was now gone. They walked around for 15 or so minutes when Bill headed up the stream a little ways. The trail runs under a main road, and then leads to a man-made lake. Just under the bridge, the water starts to get heavier, and the trees are a bit thicker. He noticed a red Lowe's card in one of the trees. "I'm taking that for the shop," he thought, as he ran over to pull it out of the stream. Calling over Hank for help, the two of them pull it out and start wheeling it back up the hill. Suddenly my dad stops. He sees something on the cart. What is this rusty-looking stuff? "Hank, stop. Look at the cart. Is that blood?" Sure enough, they looked closer, and it was blood. All over the cart, on the handle, the wheels, and the side. But it wasn't only blood they started to notice. Human hair. Utterly stunned, my dad calls the policewoman he had been talking to the previous days and explained whatever they had found. For whatever reason, the police department were very skeptical that this was evidence. At first, they didn't even believe my father. When he told them it made no sense to make up, they finally sent out a car. There were 2 police officers and a CSI. The CSI asked my dad why he thought it was blood. "It looks like blood, sir." "I'm not so sure." "How do you know that it's human hair?" the CSI asked. "Because it looks like it is," my dad snapped sarcastically. Why did he seem so hesitant? They used a chemical test, and sure enough, it tested positive for human blood. They took the card as evidence, and thanked my dad. Again, my dad tried to give his opinion on who the mystery killer might be. He suggested again that they talk with the crazy neighbors behind his auto shop. Still no information was taken down, and they left with what they had. 2 more days pass. My dad is leaving the shop to get some things from Costco. There's a small dirt alley that leads onto the main road just behind his work. In the past, it had been blocked by one of the meth addicts' cars. They were complaining to my dad and his boss about the business driving cars back and forth through the alley, disrupting them. He notices it's open, and decides to take a shortcut to his destination. But something was off. He saw the usual blocked car sitting in front of the shack. The door was wide open, and there was someone sitting on their knees with their upper body inside the car. He got in his car and crept up, just a little so he could see what was happening. Right away, he recognized the skinny red-headed woman as the female that lived in the shack. It was the shack guy's wife or girlfriend. He didn't know exactly. She was on her hands and knees, surrounded with hard chemicals. Bleach, Comet, OxyClean, and much more. My dad had said he knew right then that they were guilty. For one, why would someone be scrubbing their car with straight chemicals? No water, no rinsing. It was the middle of the day on a hot June afternoon. Second, they happened to be only 2 blocks away from a local car wash. He said it felt off, and he knew to trust his instincts. She just kept scrubbing and scrubbing the passenger side floor. He pulled out his phone and started to record her. Now he's known this woman and her SO for a few years now. Like I said, they complained about my father's workers, and complained about their dogs on and off for a while. It was all harmless bickering. My dad, always trying to be the funny guy, yells out his window as he's driving past. "Covering up a murder?" He laughed and drove away, hearing her say "fuck you" as he drove off. This time when he called the police, they took him seriously. He explained that she was cleaning the car aggressively, and that it seemed like she was trying to bleach something out of it. The next day the PD went by to talk with the residents of the shack. The day after that they made an arrest. After searching the shack, they found a large blood stain soaked into the plywood floor. Once the blood was seen, The wife crumbled and told the police everything. It was her husband, and the victim. The victim was named Rich. He had gone over to their little house to shoot up and get high. Someone ended up accusing Rich of putting some of the dope aside for himself, and things got heated. Eventually, the husband started to physically fight with Rich when he stabbed him. He bled out on the floor and died. They didn't know what to do, so they stole the Lowe's cart to move him around, loaded him into the car, wrapped him in tarp, and pushed his body down the hill. They ditched the cart, thinking the river would wash it far down enough that it wouldn't be found. My dad and Hank sat in their car while they watched the police arrest Don, the suspected murderer. He took a video of that as well. Both videos were lost when he switched phones, but there is a link to a site that reported the events. My dad says he's going to start a PI business because he solved the murder all on his own. So thanks for reading, guys. At the time I was 12, and my older sister and I were home alone for the weekend. I was waiting for a friend to pick me up, and getting a bit restless. I heard a knock on the door. Thinking it was her, I ran to answer it without checking through the peephole. A man was standing there with a clipboard, and said he needed to check our gas meter. I was entrenched in the disappointment of my friend still not having arrived, so I just told him, "Yeah, sure, whatever you need to do." I didn't notice it at the time, but he wasn't dressed as a city official. He had on a green and purple shirt with bold stripes like the host of Blue's Clues. He came in and immediately went up the stairs to where our bedrooms were, and walked into the open door of my room, the typical girly girl room with pink and glitter. Thank God my sister came downstairs at almost that exact moment. She said, "Oh, is that Daphne's dad? Why is he going upstairs?" I complained about how Daphne wasn't here, and was going on about how unreliable she was when my sister cut me off. Wait. If Daphne isn't here, then who's that? "He's here to read the gas meters." Her face turned white. She flung open the front door and dragged me out, hand clamped over my protesting mouth. She said, "Our gas meters are outside." Neither of us had a cell phone. It was the 60s, and obviously weren't going back into the house to call authorities on the landline phone. Then my ever-resourceful sister had a stroke of genius. A man was walking right by our house, and she motioned him over. She called loudly into the house, "Oh, Dad, it's good you're home. A man from the city is here to read our gas meters upstairs." Just like she'd hoped, this man on the street said, "What are you talking about?" The man in the striped shirt bolted out of the house. The man on the street asked us repeatedly if we were okay, if we needed him to stay and wait in the yard with us until our parents came home. He was a very sweet guy. We were so startled that we barely thanked him before slamming and locking the windows and doors. As irate as my sister was that I let someone into the house, she begged me not to call the authorities, because my parents had left her in charge and she worried she'd be in trouble. I didn't want to catch any heat from carelessly allowing some guy in, so I was on the same page. 3 weeks later, a girl in our community went missing. Same MO. She was home alone, and authorities found the door open and no signs of forced entry. My sister and I discussed our options, but deep down we knew we had no choice but to come clean. We told the police everything. I don't know if it ever helped, but they did tell us they had reason to believe it was the same man. They also tracked down the man who helped us on the street. Turns out we already knew him. He worked in the butcher shop. We just didn't recognize him. He was lifelong friends with the family after that. Our parents were mortified. They weren't angry with us, just glad we were okay, though they did review all the rules of caution and didn't leave us home alone for a while. They found the girl and say she'd been held for a few days and then burned alive. They never caught the man, but fear not. He was in what appeared to be his early 30s in the 1960s, so in any case he has to be long dead by now. I just thank God every day for my sister's resourcefulness and quick action.